Welcome committee members and members of the public. Just a quick reminder to please ensure that your devices/cell phones are either switched off or on silent mode whilst the meeting is in progress. And if a cell phone or other interrupts the course of the meeting, we will stop and wait for the device to be muted, just to show respect to anyone who may be at the time. This meeting is being held in the supper room of the Waihinga Centre, Martinborough Town Hall, and it is being live streamed and will be available to view on the council's YouTube channel. The emergency exits for this room are the door that you came in or the exit behind me. If we do need to evacuate this morning, please use one of these exits and assemble by the playground. Please remain at this assembly point until the building has been confirmed clear. Councillor Maynard, can I invite you to do the karakia this morning?
Kia horo te marino, kia whakapaka paunāmu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou, e te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa.
Kia ora. So the only apology I am aware of this morning is Councillor Woodcock, and I believe he will be joining us later this morning. Do I have a mover to accept the apologies from Councillor Woodcock, Councillor Gray, and a seconder, Councillor Maynard? All those in favour, please say aye.
Right.
All those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare this morning? No, perfect. We'll now move on to item B1, the Featherston Masterplan Deliberations report. So what I am proposing we do this morning is to move and receive the draft Featherston Masterplan Deliberations report, hear from our staff, and then go through and discuss and debate each of the recommendations or points. That will allow some clear and accurate minute taking as well. So do I have a mover to receive the draft Featherston Masterplan Deliberations report? Thank you, Pip, and seconded by Councillor Olds. All those in favour of receiving the report, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. Motion is carried. So we will move to hearing from Russell and those who are supporting him online, and we also have Ree and Richard with us online as well. And I will just, before we do that, just remind everyone that whilst we are speaking to the deliberations report, we are also working strongly on the knowledge that we've gained from the official submissions and consultation that has taken place to this point. So Russell, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, councillors. Thank you, Chair. I just, in terms of councillors' ongoing awareness of the master plan, and it's important for the future. I just draw you into the fact that we this morning were set to endorse the recommended amendments to the master plan as outlined in table 7, which we'll go through. We see it as a response, a good response to we had 87 submissions plus a range of different types of engagement to connect with the community to seek views and improvement measures. And then the third recommendation is just pointing out to councillors that we request that the final draft Featherston Master Plan and Implementation Plan be reported back to the Strategic Working Committee for final review and adoption at the committee's meeting of the 5th of June. So we've got further capture points in terms of map work and revision. We've had our discussions, but just a heads up, we seek to bring that back on the 5th of June. I thought I take the report as read. However, I just want to point out that table 7 is the capture that staff and the consultants have compiled to clearly articulate what amendments we hope to go with. So we can go through that. But just prior to that, I thought I'd maybe give a brief summary, drawing from section 7, if that would be helpful. So just running through it quickly in terms of, you know, the themes of change and seeking councillors' endorsement direction. So we're looking at updating the vision and the guiding principles based on to better reflect community diversity and inclusivity in terms of that feedback we've had from the engagement. Overall, the second bullet point under part 7 is the overall master plan strategy. There's an option to investigate the current growth node to have more greenfield land for future urban going into future, and that's in response to the Genges. One of the last speakers on the hearings was the Genges, and was their property to the south of Featherston. Part of that consideration as we look at that is the fact that the Genges property is within Class 2 highly productive land, yet they seek to provide further residential opportunity to the south of Featherston. I just clarify the point that the Class 2 soil of their land is between Lion Street and Waite Street. So just if we bear that in mind as part of how we tackle the topic. Third bullet point, we seek to rename the town centre heart in the master plan strategy and map. To include the Midtown Park Hub. So realising that the heart of the town is indeed the main street and the park area. So that's what we believe is the heart of the town, both those aspects. So broadening our thinking there.
Can I just raise something really quickly with regards to this, because I'm assuming that a lot of these are the changes that you wanted to go in there. I think it's really important because everywhere we've got Main Street and it tends to be with a capital, and that's very confusing because it's Fitzherbert Street. And so Main Street is in Greytown.
Good point.
And so the Main Street is actually Fitzherbert Street. And I just think that we need to ensure that we've actually got the correct name on there. So instead of Main Street, it should say Fitzherbert, and in brackets, State Highway 2, if you're wanting to clarify it. That might be actually a lot better. It's confusing.
Thank you for that.
That's a good point.
Then another key bullet point is that we keep a focus on the 2 top priorities. However, amending these, so an enhanced town centre, including Main Street, which would be Fitzherbert Street, and a connected Midtown Park Hub, and to delete priority 2, which we did have, a transformative pedestrian link to the train station. We believe we should expand that out and replace it with a new priority, upgrading the existing infrastructure, amenities, including upgrading the link to the train station with better lighting and shelter, to be more specific of the intent. The other bullet point is to amend the plan so that Daniel Street is retained as a 2-way vehicle access way, retaining parking on Daniel Street, for example. Further, delete reference to the closure of the level crossing at Fox Street, and seek further engagement and traffic assessment before any closures proceed. And I make the point that recent discussion with councillors and Kiwi Rail councillors have made Kiwi Rail aware of the significance of the sensitivity around the crossing. So that's part of further work. So just capture that we don't believe the closure of Fox Street is now suitable. Another point, retain proposed raised pedestrian crossing in Main Street. And reduce any build out to retain as much parking as possible. And that's in response to a fair amount of feedback from community and business owners in the notes. Further bullet point of note, proposed new focus ensure mana whenua, Māori and the broader community are involved in detailed designs for Fitzherbert Street and the town centre square. Further improvement work there. That's part of ensuring the design is reflective of comment or views. And then the last bullet point refers to heritage. Consider the option of the council having a heritage fund so that heritage owners may apply to the fund to cover set fees for work to such protected buildings. And we suggest this measure as part of what is seen elsewhere in the country in terms of responding to feedback from current owners of heritage buildings and to offer up a pragmatic stance to the ongoing treatment of heritage buildings and any work that needs to be done on them. So I just thought I'd go through those bullet points before we get into further going through the document with Ree and Richard and taking you through councillors, but also addressing any questions and clarification points.
Thank you, Russell. So just to clarify, so we've got table 7, which are the amendments that staff have suggested. Then we've got table 8, 8A, 8B, 8C, which are option analysis documents as well, tables as well. In terms of this table debating and making decisions, how do you see that the option analysis links back to table 7 in terms of recommendations and decisions?
The option analysis looks at, there's table 8, which is overall options analysis, and it goes into specifically each of the parts of the town. For example, 8A, the growth node boundary versus additional greenfield land, so that's in response to the changes.
Yeah.
For example, 8C, option considerations, specifically looks at the location of the link from the town centre to the train station.
Right.
The extent of work.
So if we start by discussing and debating table 7 and then move through. Perfect. Right. Councillor Elams.
Thanks, Chair. Just quickly, reading through the submissions that have been supplied to us, it was, well, I mean, from my perspective, it was great to see that there was a huge number of submissions. I think there was a lot of submissions there that were very detailed. People have put a lot of thought and consideration into. So yeah, again, from my perspective, it was just great to see that there was so much community engagement. I don't know what your thoughts are, but yeah, so much community engagement from Featherston residents into, you know, what the plan is and what the foresight is going forward for 30 years. So there's that much engagement from the community. When we, as a council, we do get a lot of pushback and a lot of questions from the Featherston community, but yeah, this is a great thing. Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. I respond to it by adding this context in terms of the link between the Featherston Masterplan, which is a 30-year vision for Featherston, and the district plan. So when the Featherston Masterplan is finalised, that feeds into the district plan. The district plan is statutorily a 10-year document that gets reviewed. So aspects of the Featherston Masterplan, such as the zoning or components of the different parts of the zone, will be captured in the district plan. The district plan, let's do a bit of a time check on that at the moment. That's, it was notified October. It's had some original submissions. It's now ready to take shortly to go out for further submissions on the district plan. So the master plan will be captured within the district plan use of zoning and a growth identification. So and that's reviewed every 10 years. So there is opportunity to not only build from the 87 submissions we got and the topics that zoning, etc. gets looked at in another 10 years through the district plan process.
Does everybody understand that, where that sits?
I just want some clarity and I'll that's why I hand up just to get some clarity. So Russell, just in terms of the Warraka Combined District Plan and their Featherston Master Plan, would it be fair to say that because a lot of work's gone into our spatial plan in terms of our master plan in particular, and I wouldn't like that to be watered down in any way, shape or form by the Warraka Combined District Plan.
Oh,
So,
it's a bolt on, yeah.
well, yeah, do I see it as a chapter within the Warraka Combined District Plan, or is it a cut and paste, I guess, of some of the stuff that's come out of this and applied? Perhaps some clarity around that would be useful.
It's a good question, thank you. That's all right. It's the chapter in the district plan is urban growth, so those areas for growth or rezoning will be captured within that chapter and any subparts of the district plan. So it directly feeds in decisions within the master plan will not be lost, they'll feed directly into the district plan, and as the chair says, it's like a bolt-on or a component addition within the district plan.
Can I just add something to that, if you don't mind? So this document forms part of the district plan. It will become an integral part of the district plan. We won't be having hearings on this document as part of the district plan submissions, because that's what this is for today.
Correct.
So this document, when we decide today, this is it, this comes in wholus bolus into the district plan. Now, in the district plan, all the other towns actually have a chapter. So there's a chapter on Featherston, on Martin Bay, there's a chapter on Greytown, because we haven't done the detailed planning at this stage. So, but whilst, as Russell said, this is a 30-year document, once it becomes part of the district plan, it's able to be reviewed every 10 years as part of the district plan. Right? Doesn't mean it gets thrown out, all this work doesn't get wasted, which means we can date it up. So whilst you can make decisions today on this document, they're not set in stone forever, as it were. They are reviewable as part of the district plan review in 10 years' time. Okay. So just keep that in mind while we're thinking about this, but hopefully that clarifies it.
Perfect, thank you. So what I am suggesting we do now is that we work our way through table 7. Whilst some of the changes are more substantial than others, I want to ensure that this table has given consideration to each of the recommended amendments, because there are quite a number of them. I don't want to feel like we've sort of lost any or not given any attention to some. Russell.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just the additional point, as we work our way through, there's some other aspects, namely, I'll give comment on one topic that came up in terms of some submitters saying, oh, there should be a roundabout at the southern end of town. I've got a comment from Tim, and the other topic specifically raised or encouraged through councillors is the prospect of the either a pedestrian link or vehicle link from the medical centre.
Perfect. I've got that noted on my list already, so good to know that we'll cover those. Perfect. So if we look at table 7, the first suggested amendment is to section 5, and it is the addition of the words cost effective to the theme. So the amended theme would be promoting coordinated, cost effective and resilient development and ensure that the town is future proofed. Do we have any comment or considered further amendments to that?
Very sensible suggestion.
So what I'm looking to do is be able to discuss and amend as we go through. So when it comes time to make some decisions on endorsement, any changes are clearly noted in the minutes for future reference. So no amendments to that one. So section 6, update section 6 and 7, our process and engagement summary to reflect the engagement that has occurred since the draft Featherston Masterplan was publicly notified and it become an appendix. Also seems very sensible and probably not needing debate. Suggest the first vision be amended and include the words diverse so that the vision reads a thriving and diverse community, all supporting each other, and expresses the concern that some submitters had that the vision be more inclusive. All happy? Fairly good.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one thought that I had on reflection, there were also quite a few submitters that mentioned that Featherston is the gateway to the Wairarapa. And another option that we didn't put into the table at the time was whether we could have Featherston a gateway to the Wairarapa with a thriving and diverse community, all supporting each other. So I just wanted to put that on the table in reflection of some of what those other submitters also said.
Absolutely hear what you're saying, but looking across to one of my Featherston colleagues, I think the thing I would say to that is whilst we, yes, are seen as a gateway, there is a large percentage of the Featherston population who also see gateway as somewhat of a negative. A gateway is something that you pass through. And what we are seeking to encourage through the master plan and through our businesses and just our wonderful community is to encourage people to stop. So we want to be a destination, a place people choose to visit rather than one that they pass through on their way to other districts or other towns within the district. So I certainly would be steering away from a reference to gateway unless the gate closes as people arrive.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I think what's important there is that that's a really good explanation of why the vision has changed to what it is and it excludes that. So thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you, Reedy. Moving on, section 10.2, there is a suggestion that principle 5 be amended to caring for our physical and natural environment, being sustainable, and suggests principle 6 be amended to read doing what we can within our means and being solution focused. And whilst it doesn't say it, I would suggest that that reflects the submissions that we've had, which is to work within our means and be mindful of cost.
Agree.
Happy with those? The next point looks at section 11.3, the focus of the plan. The suggestion is to amend the top priority so that it now reads an enhanced town centre, including the main street, which would be with a little m and a little s because it is actually Fitzherbert Street.
Including Fitzherbert Street, just take out one.
So our suggestion would be an enhanced town centre, including Fitzherbert Street and a connected mid-town park hub. Yeah.
It's like I say,
Including Fitzherbert Street.
and in brackets, State Highway 2. I mean, it's, you know, in brackets, put State Highway 2 for those that don't know.
An enhanced town centre, including Fitzherbert Street and a connected mid-town park.
One should know them.
Sorry, we're just making sure we're noting as we go. The next point is delete the existing priority 3, which is about creating this transformative pedestrian link and change that to upgrade the existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including upgrading the link to the train station to improve usability and safety. So that's talking about what we've already got in existence, but with some enhancements.
Was that the one that you said with regards to lighting, and so will that go in there or no?
Yes.
So it will to improve usability and safety by lighting, and I can't remember what the other thing was, lighting and.
Through Madam Chair, the safety can encapsulate many design elements, lighting being one of them. I mean, there's options to have CCTV cameras and others. What we did was indicate safety in recognition that people were talking about the need for such things as lighting and other dimensions for safety. I mean, where trees are positioned, for example, can affect safety as well, just in terms of sight lines and those sorts of things. So we weren't prescriptive, but open.
I think what we've got a slight discrepancy between is in the recommended changes outside of the table. The new priority does actually read upgrading existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including the link to the train station with better lighting and shelter. And within the table, it just says improve. It's different. It says to improve usability and safety. So there's actually just there is a change in words between the two. Councillor Gray.
I do feel like within that we've lost a bit of the vision of that feature within the plan. That and maybe this is because in the the earlier iterations it was hanging on the fact that the Fox Street crossing would be closed and Daniel Street would be down to one way. It's going to be this beautiful big walkway with sculptures and like it was going to be its own feature. Whereas now I feel like it's shifted quite far away from that, and it's more just about making it.
That's what we currently have.
Yeah. I was going to say a bit more pedestrian, but both senses of the word. Which I'm not necessarily against, but just understanding that seemed to be quite a big shift away from the earlier discussions around that space. And certainly when you look at the plan on the map, that's that lovely big green belt that goes through, like that's the pretty new feature. And if we're losing that or changing that, I'm not against it, but yeah, please,
Sorry, there is a point in amendment further on that speaks specifically to the shared path provided on the west side of Daniel Street. But you are right. We are now talking about the creation of an access way, whereas previously there was discussion of sort of sculpture and quite a lot of beautification of the space.
Which could still happen, but I think just in those words where it changes from transformative pedestrian link to upgrading infrastructure.
Functional.
Yeah.
Councillor.
Could I raise an issue that has risen since Russell did all this great work, and this is the raised footpaths across the Wairarapa. There's been a lot of reporting from our emergency services about
the raised crossings.
And the impact that has on our emergency services. And fire came out very clearly the other day, and I'm sure most people read the letter that the fire engines are not capable of carrying on at a normal speed across those raised pumps. And every 20 seconds, what is it, Aidan, the fire doubles in size every 20 seconds or something or other. And so any reduction in speed for our emergency services because of these crossings places property and life at risk. And I know it's a big thing, all these lovely raised crossings, but actually the impact of that could well be the exact opposite of what we want to achieve.
Absolutely agree with you. Can we just hold that thought for a minor second and just sorry, no, I just want to reduce the backwards and forwards. We just need to agree. Are we happy with the upgrade existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including upgrading the link to the fire station to improve usability and safety, which is
Train station.
train station?
Fire station.
I quite like using the word transformative because I think that actually captures exactly what you're saying, but rather than perhaps upgrade existing infrastructure, can we slot in the word transformative, because I think it's important to enhance that area. And that was the original intent.
Where are we looking collectively?
So if you
No, I'm just trying to get a feel from the table. So,
I'm on page 8.
yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I was on the wrong page, but okay.
So the original wording read transformative pedestrian link to the train station. The new amendment is upgrade existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including upgrading the link to the train station to improve usability and safety. So I think it's very clear that we've gone from sort of aspirational to functional.
Yeah.
What is the feeling of this table in terms of which way did we want to go?
functional or transformative.
I tend to feel that the functional aspect is probably more reflective of the submissions that we've received. And to me forms maybe a step 1. So step 1 is to upgrade what we have, and probably step 2 is to provide something that's more aspirational, more beautiful, but it's probably.
As long as we don't lose that with the intent. I think the intent is obviously upgrade and make it safe, etc. As long as it doesn't inhibit the opportunity of making it a little bit more transformative as time evolves, and as affordability. So I don't want to lose that sort of concept design.
Russell.
Just boring.
So to capture councillor Old's thoughts, should we have a transformative, future transformative link at the end of that sentence? I thought initially maybe in the middle, but at the end to signal that we need that.
Yeah, so the point would read upgrade existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including upgrading the link to the train station to improve usability and safety with a future transformative view.
Vision, yeah. Yeah, I think just the word transformative and vision is where we need to go, perhaps in the future.
It has the potential of being quite a centerpiece.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Part of the drive of this plan was to kind of get a better concept of how Featherston works. And I think just redoing footpaths is not it.
You did right.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I apologise for interrupting. It's very hard being online to know how to signal. Perhaps if I could comment.
You're doing a great job, Reid.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder whether you could let us work on the words for you in light of what you're saying, because we're going to come back for a final review. So just on the spot, I was thinking of something like, we could have something like improve existing infrastructure, amenities and services, including upgrading or including enhancing and over time transforming the link to the train station to improve usability and safety. And we can come back with something that picks up the themes, what you're guiding us with now, if you're happy with that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
You.
Thank you.
Moving.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to talk about it, but we're talking.
It's crossing again.
No, this is now about, it's an overarching question about the rezoning that we're going to do and whether this is the right, because there's nothing in paragraph 7 that talks about our zoning.
Yeah. So let's hold zoning because it is an important thing. We'll get through the table and then and others. So there'll be zoning, connections to the community centre and in anything else.
Yes.
Additional 7th focus, ensure mana whenua, Māori and the border community are involved in detailed designs for the town centre, including Fitzherbert Street, which is a change, and Midtown Park Hub and other initiatives that shape the future of Featherston. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Russell, but this is suggesting that as the plan evolves and projects come to light, there'll be further opportunity for engagement.
Yep, that, Councillor Ray had mentioned, the potential for structures or art pieces. So it's the potential of storyboards telling the history and cultural symbols. So yeah, it's to work with and get ideas as we go.
Perfect. Everybody happy with the idea that we'll continue to engage?
Yep.
Absolutely. Sections 11.8, 11.9 and 13.3 amend so that Daniel Street is retained as a two-way vehicular accessway, retaining parking on Daniel Street, upgrading the shared pedestrian cycleway along Daniel Street, and amend to remove the reference to the closure of Fox Street crossing.
Agree.
All strongly agree. Happy to see those there. Design map 1, Main Street, Fitzherbert Street, west linkage to the train station. So we're talking here around a raised crossing at the west entry to the town centre, retained. That's that one. So so when it says retained, let's just be very clear that that is actually retained in the plan and not an existing crossing now. So that is a new crossing to Featherston. Reduce the amount of new tree planting and include tree planting.
So there is so much backup when anything happens on the Rimutakas. I do have some concerns with regards to the raised pedestrian crossing here in place of a roundabout. I had to draw it to be able to say what it was. Because anything like that is slowing traffic, where suddenly someone is putting their brakes on, someone else is coming from around one of the other streets, who would think that there's a gap, but actually then they slow down. You may actually find that could potentially cause some really big issues. I'm not sure, that's
So I think we've got
what the thought is there of retaining it in place of.
I think there's a couple of things to consider with what is the introduction of 2 new crossings. So currently there is no what I would consider safe access from one side of town to the other, but I do think we need to be very mindful both of the points that Councillor Maynard has raised, the points Councillor Plummer raised earlier in regards to emergency services, but also that is actually a relatively short stretch of space. My estimations of distance are terrible, so I won't try, but that is 2 crossings in close proximity, and that will also have an impact on car parking to those businesses, of which there is probably 4 or 5 in that west stretch. So there's a bit to discuss here. Russell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You captured points. The questions raised are relevant in terms of practicality of ambulance or emergency service doing their business and the risk of backup as you enter town. And let's jump back in terms of the master plan. The 2 raised crossings have been seen as having merit because they seek to achieve 2 things. Recognise the current situation of Featherston, which is a straight dash through. People go through the town at high pace. And also, as we've been doing our multi-contact with the community and seeking views, we've heard from a range of the community, including particularly with dads with children, a better pedestrian link, pedestrian safety across the Fitzherbert Street, as the chair has pointed out. So it serves the point of responding to community feedback, improve the pedestrian linking around the town, and also a sense of placemaking or traffic calming and responding to the high speed sort of travel that's currently and has also occurred through Featherston.
Yeah.
So if we keep that in mind before you make your decision, then you'll have all the considerations.
I would, I absolutely hear what you're saying. Could be supportive of one crossing in that space, given that, as I said, there is none. I struggle to see a need for two particular, I mean, and I know we're taking a long-term view, but the one closer to the railway station, the only things in that triangular block presently are the service station. And I just struggle to see the need for two, given the potential parking impact to our businesses. But I'm only one person, Bosley.
Well, the further crossing closer towards Russell, so, you know, it's got an island in the centre of it, it's on the corner. Like, you know, in terms of the number of traffic movements around there, like adding a zebra crossing feels dangerous.
Very dangerous.
To say the least, and I agree that I think only one crossing, it's such a short stretch of road is needed, especially if they will take out several car parks as well, which I think want to retain that vibrancy that we're talking about, people stopping and whatever in Featherston enjoying it.
Yeah, I think if we
Got 10 car parks and
not being a gateway, but being a stopping
place, right?
I think the thing that we can do to most encourage that is having easy parking. Councillor Gray.
So just speaking quite strongly in favour of one of them at least, so the one sort of further up that way next to the
Train.
the intersect, no, away from the train line,
Back to the intersection.
back to the intersection, that guy there. So this is a part that I cross a lot, because I live just around the corner from there. Lots of people naturally cross there. Coming both ways.
There is probably maybe 10 or 12 car parks in Wakefield Street. You can sort of see them there. So it is quite a handy place to park if you're coming into that earlier part.
And further,
Herbert Street.
Wakefield Street, so you sort of get up to Underhill Road, that's where there's sports grounds, swimming pool, all that sort of stuff. So that does link half of the town, you know, easy walking space. And it is really hectic crossing the road there at the moment. So people do use that as a crossing, you know, already. I think this is just about making it safer for those that do. But yeah, I think the one that's closer to the train line, it's hard to see the value in having one there when there's another crossing down the other side, on the other side of it. Unless that lines up with where the new traffic island is, because there's no car park there now. But, you know, like if you've already lost, well, I mean, there wasn't any car parks there because it was a driveway, but, you know, if it sort of lined up with that a bit better, possibly. But yeah. And I think the other thing too is in terms of where that one is closer to the train line, if you go into really any international websites and look up Featherston, one of the first things that you'll see that comes up is that we have a cheese shop. And I'm not saying that we should base our 30-year design around one existing business, but I would say that we've got an example of a very successful, well-known business that is a destination for Featherston, and having that crossing there.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, that those businesses there would be really affected by having any more interference with that part of the road.
Councillor Gray and then Councillor Olds and Councillor Maynard.
Yeah, so it's a little deceiving, that picture, to be quite honest, because there are a lot of private entrances into those car parks where some of those car parks are actually identified. There's a number of private entrances into people's property and businesses along there. That's probably the busiest hub centre within Featherston in terms of a commercial activity. You've got your cafe and restaurant and cheese and takeaways, etc. So between the railway line and Wakefield Street is a very productive area in terms of commercial sector for Featherston. I think it's really important to identify the fact that those parks that are there aren't there actually, because we've got a great big bus stop in there, which prevents a lot of people from parking. The fact that it's a bus stop and it's only used on frequent occasions to pick up passengers is still a no parking area. So that's been taken out of the equation in terms of vehicle parking. If I go back away a little further, there's a couple of entrances there, for instance, that could be quite safely utilised as car parks, but of course they allow access to people's property, so it's a real problem. I thought we may have perhaps enhanced across the road a little bit more in front of the Royal there, because there's quite a space in there, and I see in the layout and design it really is tightly congested in there. I know I frequently park in there myself, so you've got to be cautious without backing into that bloody power pole that's there. But that, in my view, we could have perhaps captured that a little bit better in terms of that State Highway 53 entry into State Highway 2, and perhaps enhance that area, and then thought about the pedestrian crossing. I agree that pedestrian crossing where at the Wakefield end of the street is probably the best location for it, but we need to pick up some parking within that perimeter. So anyhow, that's
Thank you. What I'm roughly hearing around the table is support for one new crossing. I'm hearing at this point stronger support for the Wakefield end than the rail crossing end.
Can I just ask, because we're doing a lot of work to make the other side more accessible to make that link, to make that more of the walkway, to make that side like where the other crossing is. And I just, why are we doing that if this side is the one that's like more heavily used? Because if we are going to be doing that and making that link, it almost makes more sense to have the crossing on that side. And I'm taking my hat and actually literally asking the question to those that use it like myself.
And so in terms of Daniel Street, are you talking about the enhancement? Yeah. So in terms of that, so you if you were using Daniel Street, you would simply cross towards the supermarket, and and you use the existing crossing to get up that side anyway. And that crossing is arguably closer than the new proposed one on this side.
So that's why. So the thing is, by putting in that one in the middle, that's almost like having 1, 2, 3 within the space of like 50 meters.
I'm not a distance person. I won't suggest the distance, but it seems close.
The other one.
Can we
there,
We give Richard an opportunity to comment based on the question.
Thank you, Chair. Just to sort of fill in a little bit of sort of background to it, really. The one on the left of the plan was there both to recognise the need for people to safely cross the road, but it was also there to sort of mark the entrance to the town centre very much, to show that it was a much more, whilst we recognise there's always going to be heavy traffic, it was sort of to mark the entrance to the centre as a area which has a greater pedestrian focus than it currently has. So it sort of has two roles. And then in relation to the other one, further to the east near the railway, there's two reasons for the location there. One was to further slow traffic, or three reasons actually. And probably the most important one in a way was to recognise the fact that we were at that time, and I think you still are, looking at a potential link through to the medical centre. And whilst we appreciate that many people will be walking just from there to the pharmacy, it does provide an ability to cross the road nearer that location, where that's going to sort of pop out onto the main street, so that people can continue from the south of town heading up to the medical centre and vice versa. So that was the other reason for having that. The only other thing for me is clearly we have taken out or suggesting that we take out the two trees that are shown on the north side of the street. The areas of green sort of planting within the existing parking areas, we're suggesting they get removed. So as it currently stands, even with both or the eastern crossing requires the removal of two spaces on the north side of two parking spaces on the north side of the street. There isn't, as you know, any parking on the south side of the street there. It is a bus lay-by, so that could still remain. And at the west side of the street, the entrance, as it were, there's no parking required to be removed for that to be provided in that location. So on this stretch, we're only looking at losing 2 parking spaces. So I just wanted to fill in that background.
I hear you say only 2, but I think off the top of my head, there's probably only maybe 8 parks in that section. And so only 2 is a 25% loss.
Precisely.
Yeah, I'll double check for you. I've got the figures for that. Sorry.
I am conscious of time, so there is much to discuss. So I do want to keep us moving. So can I have an indication, please, if we are supportive of the introduction of 2 crossings, or if we are more supportive of the introduction of 1? So just as an indication, those who would be supporting 2, please raise your hands. And those who would be more in support of 1, please raise your hand. So the amendment to this particular.
To me, this smacks of doing things in isolation. There doesn't seem to be any link between us, Waka Kotahi, and NZ Rail, or whatever they call Kiwi Rail now, because they've just spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars doing the railway crossing. Why they didn't incorporate a pedestrian crossing there at the same time, because when I look at this diagram, you go, stop at the railway crossing, stop at the pedestrian crossing, 100 metres apart. And
You might be stopping at first choice as well, because there's just.
So this means that we are doing things without talking to the other agencies, and it's just daft.
So what's on the other side of the road opposite Lang's Pharmacy?
We had talked
Nothing.
No, that's a Harcourts.
Yeah, so
There's nothing there. No, no, it's not a high pedestrian.
Sorry, thank you. So I think the indication is clear. We would support 1 closer to Wakefield than there. I think we can move on. So the amendment to the design map would be an indication to Ree and the team to.
No, one's better than 2. None of them better than that.
So that's that one, the new raised pedestrian crossing out at east.
You might put
We don't recommend that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just. Take it out.
What about access?
Yeah, man, what's that through?
You, Madam Chair, that would mean in terms of the minutes and your decision
It's going to go.
is that we would remove bullet point 4 in table 7 under design map 1.
Perfect.
So we'll just remove that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the Danielle Street to remain anyway.
Is that for the
No, we can't, that's the same, though.
Yes.
So I think.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Reen.
Close it down and not there.
Stop.
We've loosely talked over the other bullet points within there. Daniel Street to remain 2-way, 3-metre shared pedestrian, multi-use space, and Daniel Street deleted, and no changes to at this time to the Fox Street level crossing, because we're leaving in that in Kiwi Rail's capable hands for now, which moves us on to design map 2. Alter the title to read Town Centre, Fitzherbert Street East and Booktown Precinct. So the recommended amendments, and we'll try and move through them relatively quickly to give all of the other topics their due time as well. Shared space is shown for Birdwood Street retained. It noted that the space available for vehicles in these is sufficient to allow 2-way traffic. The future detailed design for these spaces can ensure that it is clear that the space does allow the free movement of vehicles through these streets. So I guess that's what's saying is that in principle, we agree with that being a shared space and that the detailed design is yet to come. Raised table at the west end of Squircle deleted, which I think is your concern about raised areas on the road, Councillor Plummer. Curb line.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It does not, because every chapter, every part we've gone through talks about upraising our pedestrian crossings.
Russell,
Every single one.
Russell, can you just talk to, is raised crossings, is that a regulatory health and safety legislation that we have to meet, or can newly installed crossings be road level, provided they have the right markings, lighting and signage? Is raised crossing the new standard, I guess, for what I'm,
State highways, you mean?
for any road, but particularly in this case, it's the main road.
Got his hand up.
I can't.
Chid, can you answer that for us, please?
I don't know the answer, I'm afraid, but what I can say is that Waka Kotahi are around the country and within the Wairarapa area, raising existing crossings on state highways to be the form that we've got. And what we've drawn on here is based upon designs that Waka Kotahi support.
Those designs are now in question, and the new minister has already said he wants them taken out.
Yeah, but I think what we could do is there is the ability to make them while they remain as high.
Okay, so what we would be looking at is that crossings, so now that we've decided that there will just be the one, that would be installed in accordance with regulations at the time. And it sounds like the minister's direction is for free flowing traffic, so probably a road level crossing. Is there anything?
Just make sure that is across all the. If we're going to go that way, and I don't know what everyone else's view is, but if we're going to go that way, can we make sure it is adopted across all our crossings? Because they're going to have some raised, some not raised. All you're going to do is create confusion.
Well, I don't think that at our cost we would be going and ripping out the ones that have been raised to make them flat, but I would imagine that we're proposing to put in, i.e. the one near Wakefield Street, would be done in accordance with the direction of the.
Okay, I have an issue with that, and this is the only reason is because that one that's on Birdwood Street pretty much links from the school to the park to I have a real concern that there are children that will be crossing and
that
it's
is
not
currently
raised.
that's currently raised. Yeah.
So it is raised, we would leave it, okay, cool.
That was amended and upgraded over January.
Yeah.
And that's now raised.
On here, it says that it's existing pedestrian crossing, upgraded to raised crossing. So you're saying that's already been done now? Okay, it probably doesn't need to be in there then if it's already done. Look, we've got this in the master plan, but they've just said that that's actually being done as a raised crossing.
Can I just make a comment though?
But that's right.
Yes. None of these raised crossings were for safety. They were for slowing traffic down. That was the reason. That is the argument.
It's ultimately for safety.
No, it's for speed.
Yeah, but
You know, there is no evidence to say that people have been hit.
You might have.
Across New Zealand on crossings.
I love the idea.
been in Petone before they raised any of theirs and.
Can I just,
someone get hit on Jackson Street, so yeah.
Can we just, we're
Don't wait for someone to drive.
one at a time so that we keep moving in the right direction,
So
councillor.
just in terms of raised pedestrian crossings, I love the concept in terms of slowing traffic down in our town centres as such, and that's achieved a really good result in the case of Featherston, and particularly with heavy traffic. Some of the outlying streets may be a little bit of a different argument, but I'm really supportive of a raised crossing in those heavily built up areas. So we have different views on it. That's fine.
Right up until the time the ambulance. They can't get
No, ambulances didn't have cope now, and they've been raised for some time, and it may have been raised by emergency services.
The
but, yeah.
concerns for both by knowing now that it is already raised, so we're not.
It's already raised.
Anymore, so that's okay, we've got that one, okay.
So curb lines on State Highway 2 are not altered. Fox Street redesigned as shown in the consultation draft plan to allow easier pedestrian movement between the areas. So provided we're happy with what we saw, and that's good. Potential for additional car parking in the existing paper road by the playground retained. New raised crossing at the east entry to town centre. Can you just show us where that one is, please? So that's down by the memorial, by the war memorial, yes.
Where's the new?
Sorry?
So it's this, there is the introduction of a fourth crossing, which is down, so this is the war memorial. For the love of books.
Yeah. Can we just go out a little bit? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, so Hickson Street.
So
I see, yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Is that another raised crossing?
Well, it would be built to the specifications of the time.
I like that idea. Once again, it identifies that, that business or commercial hub, of Featherston, once you enter that, yeah.
I guess the justification for that one is the,
Sorry, how many crossings?
is
Many crossings?
It's like 400, for God's sake.
Another crossing?
We've got rid of it.
I
I
would
would just paint the whole line as a crossing and make it pedestrian.
the justification for that one would be the enhancement of that end of Fox Street. But the decision of this table is it required, given
The one
The one,
20 feet further north, further south.
can you just talk me through that, what appears to be, yes, what is that? Is in the middle of the, is that a platform?
Rich, I'll go to Richard.
or is that like, so?
Oh,
would it be-
No, down in Richard.
Yeah.
So this is the
Fox Street
crossing,
intersection.
but if you could go back the other way and just at this,
That one?
Street intersection.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
what is that?
that was a table to slow speed, but we're suggesting that be removed.
That is one that's been removed.
Yeah, we suggested that, so we've just said that we will concentrate on new crossings rather than other.
Yeah, so
sort of
that's
beaten
the
track
raised table, that's the raised table.
One.
west end.
Yeah. So that goes. And all this planting goes so that we, checking this, we would lose, sorry, we'd lose potentially 5 parking spaces at this end of town.
Fine,
At that end. I think it was 5. Sorry, I'm going to check my other document, because I've noted that down.
I
Oh,
feel
sorry, 3. 3.
three is,
Yeah, 3 parking spaces to get that in.
councillor Gray.
So with the parking, that losing those spaces is ameliorated by the fact that we have angle parking really close by on Fox Street. So while we would lose a couple off Fitzherbert Street, we'd actually be gaining more in that area. But the other thing that was raised in one of the submissions is that with that crossing, that's right outside a workshop that has driveway access from Fitzherbert and Hickson. And I'm just not confident that the placement of that crossing wouldn't interfere with access to that.
No, because that corner doesn't actually look quite like that. That corner currently is a big courtyard, a drive-in courtyard for a business on that corner. So I think councillor Gray is quite right. That placement actually in reality
May not
may
work.
not work.
There's also a very derelict building down there that probably doesn't need its car park.
We can see that in the picture, unfortunately. Thoughts on a 4th crossing?
So, yeah, and we can all laugh at the crossings and it's lots of them, but if we are looking at Featherston, it's a town that's split really in half. And you look at one side of the town that has a swimming pool, a sports ground, a lot of the businesses, all of that. And then the other side of the town has a lot of families and kids. And so if we're trying to attract more people into the main street, it does make sense that we make it accessible across there. And this particular area down here, we put our future heads on, this is our Booktown precinct. So when we're having festivals, we're closing sections of the road, it makes sense to make this as pedestrian friendly as possible. Currently, there's not a lot of people who cross the road down there. I would imagine they're sort of further up, but having the ability to get across there safely, you know, with that part of that end of Fox Street being a shared pedestrian vehicle area anyway, I think it makes sense to have that there.
Just helps.
Could the direction at this point, given that the final plan will come back to us, could the direction at this point be that actually the positioning of that crossing be reinvestigated? Because I'm not convinced it's in the right
Because over someone's
place.
driveway.
And perhaps a reconsideration of its location might actually give this table better comfort at having one, or again, not just to actually convince us perhaps it's not required. Is that something that can be done?
Okay, cool.
Richard or Richard, do you want to comment back to the chair?
No, more than happy to look at that, and I see the issue you're raising regarding that driveway, which I'd missed, I have to admit. But they could certainly be realigned so that it's just moving a little bit to the west, for instance, would still provide an equally good connection and still not interfere with those driveways. So that's fine. More than happy to do that.
Thank you, Richard. Is there any other amended point under the design map 2 that raises the need for discussion, or can we move on to design map 3?
There's more observation, right? But Greytown's only got 3 crossings, right? That's twice the length of this. So Hathaway's twice the length of this. I live on Main Street, about, I don't know, 300 or 500 metres from the centre of town, and in the weekends, like the traffic outside is stationary. Like there's no movement at all. I can, you're mad to try and get out of your driveway. So, there's adding more zebra crossings here is not necessarily a good thing, I don't think.
No, you raise a valid point, and I think we need to look carefully at the repositioning of that one before we make any decision around whether another one is required. And I'd certainly be reluctant to put a crossing in that vicinity that would take 3 car parks away from that business. But we'll see what Richard comes back with.
Trying to generate economic growth here, not chips.
Absolutely. So moving along to design map 3, which is the linkage to the train station in North. The amendments are amend to remove new shared path along Johnson Street and link this along Bell Street.
Right.
So there is an existing path, but it is the one that runs closer to Bell Street. Retain the shared path from access to train station car park to the sports hub. And so that's further up. So that's running further down by the dog park.
Which one's this? Sorry, I'm just
So up Johnson, it's sort of that bright green part.
Up on the map there.
Yeah, up there, up the top.
yeah, no, I couldn't find what was it on practice?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's more like moving right.
So have we got any comment on that, or are we supportive of that?
No, I quite like that.
I think it makes sense. You get
What about Beck? She's got her hand up.
Yeah,
that's great.
I think it definitely makes sense, but I think it's also quite a low priority at this stage, mostly because it's a very wide street.
So very.
There's no access issues down there at the moment. And I think as different parts of the plan come to light and sort of join up and start to make more sense, I think, if that's kind of instigated in response to how the use of the space unfolds.
And how Kiwi Rail go.
Yeah, I don't know how Kiwi Rail go, but at the moment there's not access issues down there currently. So there's already a footpath down there, there's already a nice wide street.
I'd have to say that with all these crossings and everything going on, if I was coming from Wellington, I'd be turning off and going down State Highway 53 and avoiding town, because you just won't get through town. And for our businesses on Main Street, there won't be anywhere to park.
Yeah.
There won't be anywhere. So
I think what we've
Focus on, I mean, we're discussing this area here. We've discussed Fitzherbert Street.
It's madness.
Can I just make a comment on Bell Street in particular, because that obviously is an area that is up for consideration in terms of flooding. That we've got that small street between Johnson Street and the railway crossing on Bell Street, and how we can best utilise that, because there will be access for pedestrian traffic, I would imagine, if that area is closed. So do we do some plantings? Do we do something with that surplus bit of street?
I think, Russell, would that be part of the further detailed plans that you've discussed?
Yeah, that section there, that's what I'm referring to, yeah.
Yeah, I think I just want to quickly just address councillor Plummer's comment, and just,
We're going to go back to.
no, we're not going to relitigate that. We're just to reassure that at this point in time, all we've done is acknowledge that from a safety perspective, a crossing at somewhere in the vicinity of Wakefield Street could potentially have merit, and that we will consider that one right at the other end if it is in a better position that doesn't impact parking. We've made no decision to include a fourth crossing at this point. We've simply left it there for consideration. Councillor Egan's.
Thanks. Yeah, I was certainly that was on map 3 where follow through with councillor Gray's comments. Yeah, amend to remove that shared path along Johnson Street and link across to along to Bell Street. I think really reading through some of those submissions, there was feedback from submitters that we needed to concentrate on infrastructure rather, and there were other things that were nice to have, but I think that's nice to have. The feedback has come back and it's been removed, so I think it's great.
Thank you very much. Are we comfortable can move on from there? The next block of the table are just minor updates. The only thing that I would sort of say from there is just to check the use of the words Main Street again and just make sure that they are updated as instructed to be the use of Fitzherbert Street. I think we can probably leave table here and move on to the discussion around the other points that you wanted to raise, Russell, and other points of importance to this table.
Thank you, Chair. First minor point of clarification was councillors made for topic of roundabout prospective value of a roundabout near Wakefield Street off Fitzherbert Street. Clarification. I know after that meeting, Tim may have had discussions with some councillors, but I've drawn him out to confer the comment to the Chair. He is aware of no intention by Waka for the future instalment of a roundabout to serve any safety needs on streets. So,
is that something that this table could advocate and lobby Waka Kotahi for? Because there is potential merit, and it would, we would need to probably investigate that further, but potential merit for a roundabout both at the Wakefield end and potentially the Boundary Road end as well, for a roundabout of some sort. Particularly the Wakefield end, if we are looking ahead to the potential closure of the Brandon Street rail crossing and the flow-on effect that may have at that intersection. So whilst it may not be a decision for today, or I think we need to, as a council, be mindful that our job may, in the not too distant future, may be to advocate to Waka Kotahi for enhanced safety measures at that crossing, at that intersection.
The balance, thank you, Chair. That's a good signal for the future, but balanced against the potential of a future roundabout in close proximity to a raised pedestrian crossing.
Or just a pedestrian crossing, if it's not there already.
At traffic lights.
I said they do that in Hawaii now.
Thank you, Russell. You said you would also be able to give us some.
So that was roundabout topic. Other topic, we were encouraged to ask to investigate and feedback as to the suggestion of a pedestrian link or link from the medical centre behind the town through to the bakery pharmacy car park, given the nature of a Kiwi Rail's placement of a median barrier, so that it would help address or create better linkages from the rear through to the pharmacy car park and ultimately through to.
And from the doctors.
Can we just go to the map with that?
From the
Crystal?
doctor.
Just if we can bring that in.
I have a handout,
Oh,
Do you have a handout? Beautiful.
even better.
and I'll get Nick. Nick has done the work on it, so.
Welcome, Nick.
It has costings.
Sure it does.
Okay.
Russell.
Put it Main Street at the top. Remembering we have Ray and Richard here, and I just jumped us back in time.
You were right.
When Kendall was doing the work with me and Ray, Richard, we looked at the grade and access by the Chinese takeaways. From deliberate considerations of councillors, it was determined that because of cost, we move from a vehicle access to a walkway access. Now that was the last topic. Because of costs and constraints, the view was that it was to be a pedestrian type access. Nick has done the investigation, and I'll let him talk on that with you. Now that we've also got a costing through feedback from town.
Yeah, so like Russell said, originally there was about 6 different options for pedestrian path. Discussion with landowners, sort of narrowed it down to one axis route through from the pharmacy to the medical centre.
Sorry to interrupt you, Nick. I'm just mindful that the last time we had a similar conversation, it was public excluded due to commercial sensitivity. So that doesn't exist in this case today. The commercial sensitivity or the need for this to be publicly excluded?
That's consideration, but generally no. You've asked for investigation of a route path.
Just double checking. I mean, this names the owners and things. I just wanted to be sure that we're around here. Perfect. Carry on.
Don't mention them, like.
No.
Yeah, maybe they can be taken out. Names.
No, that's fine. If we can carry on and with that in mind, it'd be perfect.
But the 3 owners are listed, particularly where the access goes through, showed interest in a pedestrian path. So we've got costings of that together. And yeah, so that range there within the 130,000. And I think through further deliberations as well, we looked at potential of the vehicle access as well, interest in that.
And that's following the same pathway, Nick?
Yeah, that's the pathway, but that was about 100,000 more. So yeah, so those are the sort of options on the table.
Fantastic, thank you.
There would only be one way into it though, of course, it's Herbert Street.
Mhm.
And then when you come out, you would have to turn north.
To Wakefield Street.
Is that right?
Yeah, there is.
So one way in, one way out.
Oh, wait.
Or you can go back out through the community centre car park onto Wakefield and go whichever way you want.
Yeah, you can't get into it coming from the north on Fitzherbert Street.
No, you drive down the road.
Wakefield and come in around the back.
Yes.
Like,
You get through the car park.
what I do like about this, I think it's, and the one thing that I guess that I am aware of from some of the residents in Featherston, the older residents, who still look at me as the town crier. But who have spoken about just the access between the medical centre and the pharmacy, and the fact that they have to go right round to be able to access that. So this is just an option that would really help them.
Thanks, good.
Yeah.
Are you talking vehicle or walking?
Also, at the moment, that they have to go right round to if they're walking or if they're driving. Even though they're just here from each other, you literally, yeah. So it's both. Pretty cool. So that's it's great to see that the feedback previously is actually getting right.
In terms of next steps with this sort of proposal, it's not, it came out of the draft master plan. So how would we potentially get it back into the draft?
I think this came, I think, probably from a direction that, as a response to the fact that the barrier, traffic barrier went in, massively affecting the viability of the businesses there. So at the time we took it out of the plan, it was because, well, you know, like it's, but it's, you know.
I guess that's my keenness to get it back in, and as I see that.
So does it need to be part of the plan, or can it be done as a?
And that's my next question. Does it need to get back into the plan and potentially become part of a 30-year plan, or is actually there a need for this to stand alone so that it could potentially become a much faster?
It does mean that other pedestrian crossing makes more sense.
So my, is there a way to do it alongside the spatial plan? And then that way, so if we can put it, if we can't put it in.
I can see that Ree has comment, and Russell does as well.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, in light of the conversations that Nick's had with the landowners and the preferred link that kind of goes, you know, and with option 3B, it was named. Is it possible on the master plan that we could just put an indicative link to the medical centre, or words to that effect? In other words, it's not precise, but it is indicated in the preferred link that currently is under discussion anyway.
You feel about that?
Yep.
Councillor Gray, I know this is a passion area of yours.
Oh, it really is. So the other thing that we've got going on in that space is that there is currently a vacant section there. And I know at the moment, a lot of Featherstonians have kind of made their own little walkway through there. There's a little pathway that's gone through. So people cut through there to get to the weekend market. In your discussion with business owners, has it been looked at whether or not that piece of land through there either in whole or part of it, I'm not too sure, but it does, to my mind, mean that we could enhance the amount of parking through the back there, still providing the link through to the main street, but also providing more parking for the businesses up this end of town. Do you know, like you could have some really nice signage on the corner of Wakefield Street saying parking for bakery, cheese shop, weekend market down this way, and direct it through the back.
Where would you get access? Sorry.
Through the community centre.
Community centre car park, yeah.
Side 38 Fox Street, so there's been discussion with the landowners showing some interest.
Okay. So I think we've got an opportunity to not just, stick a walkway in and hope for the best, but like to actually really look at this block here as, lovely street frontage for the businesses, but really good access behind.
Additional parking.
Yeah.
I like that idea, yeah.
And, not necessarily needing a two-way car driving through into the main street if it's well signposted that you get in through Wakefield Street, but potentially increases the safety. Yeah.
So the direction would be to continue investigating the access way and the potential for increased parking via that lot. Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, Chair and councillors, two consideration points, because I know this is topic that's close to your heart, isn't it? Measure. Discussions today, getting out in the field and doing the discussions Nick's been doing. The nature of the discussion has mainly been anchored around the pedestrian link, so we would have to although we've got costings for the vehicle type, it have to really talk with people. There may be an element of resistance to the vehicle type linkage, and there's also the added cost. And the only other point is, has the costing got component, the factor of land purchase?
I'm sure it doesn't for that lot, but I think when we're taking a long view, which is what the master plan's asking us to do, and when we've heard so strongly from our retail businesses and on Fitzherbert Street, that parking is an issue. If we've got the opportunity to increase capacity, then we should at least investigate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for vacant settlements.
And as we know from other discussions, you can't make land.
No,
Janice.
I'm guessing that this doesn't currently exist in the capital programme for the enhanced annual plan, Russ? So I think the question still remains, the one that was raised about whether this stays attached to the master plan or whether there is a discussion at deliberations about passing on the project. Because without that, you've got nothing in next year at all to do anything if this is an urgent issue for you.
So
It's very much an urgent issue because one of the businesses that has been affected, I don't know if bleated on about it here or if everybody's aware, but the pharmacy, where the pharmacy is now, is in violation of Health New Zealand, Te Whatu Oro's access guidance for healthcare facilities. So not only do we,
because of Kiwi Rail.
because Kiwirail have put in the traffic barrier, there's now not equal access from both directions to get into there. And, you know, we don't have a lot of commercial free space in Featherston, and we really do run the risk of losing the pharmacy. The bakery, I think, have said that this weekend after that traffic barrier went in, their sales by 50%.
So, I'm sorry, I was just looking for the email. So, Andy Lyons from Kiwi Rail, in his email yesterday indicated a willingness from Kiwi Rail to meet with affected businesses. He came back early this morning or last night. I'm just struggling to find his reply, and confirmed that he would make further steps to make that happen, with the outcome being is that this morning's one? Yeah. He said we will coordinate the arrangements to sit down with the businesses impacted by the traffic island so we can all come up with a way to help relieve the pain on this one. What that will look like remains to be seen, and I doubt that it will involve the purchase of land for further car parks. But that is the indication that they've given. But you are right that traffic island has impacted business. It has had massive unintended consequences, and
resources that probably couldn't wait an additional year for us to get it into a different plan.
We can bring it forward as part of the deliberations paper if that's what you would like to do.
Yes,
thank you.
Please.
It would be great to see if Kiwi Rail with the new engagement, if you came to the party and perhaps not necessarily help purchase some additional land for off-street parking, but certainly came to the party to help facilitate improvement on the current situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. When we met with them last, they indicated that perhaps at our cost we could put in some 5-minute parking, and that would be helpful. And you'll remember that I suggested that, given that they had created the problem, it seemed unfair of them to suggest that we should fix the problem that they had created. So we will see where we go from here. But I think if we can have this information and this option added to the EAP deliberations, that would be a good next step for that discussion. There are a number of option analysis within tables 8 onwards. One that I am particularly interested to discuss with Russell is table 8A regarding the current growth node boundary versus additional greenfield land. So you'll remember that the original draft talked very much about the intensification of building within our current boundary, the subdivision of existing properties, etc., etc. And we had a very good submission from the Gange family, who suggested and I guess challenged this table to consider actually the expansion of the boundary and what it would look like to actually create more properties outside of our existing boundary. Table 8A takes us through 3 options to consider. And I was just hoping, Russell, that perhaps you could talk to that a little bit for us.
Yeah, we work with consultants to come up, as the chair said, 3 options. Option A, make no change to the current growth boundary. That's basis of being consistent with the regional growth framework and development within urban boundary and very close proximity to train station. Option B, potential to add 10 to 12 hectares of greenfield land at the end of Lyon and Wallace, White Street to the master plan. So that's quite a bold step there to include. And option C is include reference in the overall master plan strategy map to investigate further adjustments to the growth boundary to allow for greenfield land supply. So somewhat of a halfway measure, but includes consideration. And then it's got the respective advantages and disadvantages in the 2 columns.
Russell, does a decision around option B, does that then prevent council from working with other landowners to encourage similar development? To my mind, the move of the boundary is a good thing. I think it makes sense to me. I'm just trying, I guess, to give an indication of between option B and C, actually what gives council and therefore the community the better outcome and the better options moving forward.
Taking option B is a bigger visionary step for the adding to the breadth of the master plan in terms of residential provisioning for growth. So it's a bigger change. Within that topic, as I mentioned earlier, is like any topic you need to consider what's made by submitters and their land or proximity of their land to the main part of town, but also need to consider the nature of the land in question, i.e. that it's class 2 soil. So within the topic for your decision-making basis, you've got the mix of further residential development and enhancing the town long-term. Got the type of soil that the land is currently is, and you've got the national policy on highly productive land, particularly class 1, class 2 soils, and ongoing protection of the rural capacity.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Maynard and Councillor Plummer, but we'll end like Elams, but we'll just go to Ray first and move from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in response to your question, staff are recommending option C, which is to include reference to investigating greenfields land within the node, which is a significant change to what is in the current master plan, because currently it is suggesting containment. So this does give you an opportunity, option C, to either to grow both within the town centre and also outward. You asked a question about if you just put it in at the corner of the Wallace and Waite Street, which was what the submission asked, does that stop you talking to other owners? I think what option B does is then indicate that that is your preference of where that green field should be, whereas option C actually indicates that you are open to the opportunity, and so therefore you might speak to other landowners as well. You're not precluding option B. That is a possibility, and it also means that it gives a signal to those landowners if they want to continue with their investigations, their submissions to the proposed plan, or try a private plan change, then it's not out of keeping with the principle of any updated master plan that says you wanted that to be some greenfields to be investigated.
Thank you. So it gives an indication to the submitters that that is something we're open to, but also to other landowners equally, that we are open for consideration, which seems right. That was Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, look, I think the Grange has done a huge amount of work on this, and it would be remiss of us not to take their application seriously. But I really want Russell to give our fellow councillors a real understanding of what the soil classifications mean in terms of, should we say yes, should we go with option B, will that put us in direct conflict with that policy and therefore in direct conflict with the district plan? So could you just explain how you think if we were to adopt
Further to that, can you also talk to the likelihood or other of the coalition government making changes to highly productive land as well? So if you could combine the two, that would be helpful, I think, at this point.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I'll do 3 points.
Yeah, no pressure.
So the soil classification types relies on scientific expertise of identification. Types 1, 2, and 3. There's about seven types. Types 1, 2, and 3 are required to be protected. For a while there, the thinking was, are they going to just protect types 1 and 2? But types 1, 2, and 3 fall under the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land, for the ongoing protection of and rural capacity for rural purposes of such highly versatile and productive land. The National Policy Statement, there's still the expectation that that's upheld, and city, district and regional councils do their work to uphold the National Policy Statement, which sits above regional plan or district plan. The third point was recent government change. We haven't heard anything in terms of any U-turn on that National Policy Statement. It's not to say that that might come with their direction setting, but what they have changed. The other topics where we've seen change, Mr. Chris Bishop saying, don't worry about the urban limits, develop land, and the rescinding of the importance of natural character areas. So we haven't seen any direct signal of change or U-turn on this topic.
I'm not quite sure that explains the conflict that could arise between this and the district plan.
So sorry, if Councillor, is your question, if we were to endorse option B, then are you suggesting that over option C, are you in
direct conflict with intent?
Option
plan.
Yeah.
So councillors brought up the district plan, so due work has been done in that in terms of soil overlay areas, so that's been captured in the district plan. So to open up an class 2 type area of the urban development would be going against the National Policy Statement and what's been captured with the district plan. However, nothing is stopping a committed landowner who wants to provide for a town for further residential development, and they need to
which would fall under option C.
Which should be option C. And
That's the one I'd favour.
consultant on board and advocate the customer.
Yeah.
And signal in the application and work with council the relative merit points of the different topics.
Okay, so
Can I-
can I just expand that a little bit more? Sorry, I just want to tease this out right to the end so that everybody's understand that you're saying that a private person could do that. What happens if this table said, actually, we prefer option B? How do we go about doing that to make sure that that is acceptable under the district? Because if a private person could do it, the council could do it.
The point says council may need to resource, so financially back, a plan change variation unless the owner undertakes a private plan change. So option B, to my mind, lumps us with the cost of that.
Yeah, but my question is, how would, as a district, we are trying to give effect to the policy statement on highly productive land. This proposal from the Granges sits within that zone of productive land. If we were to say this is a really good thing for Featherston, how do we as a council give effect to that, knowing that it could well be in conflict with the district plan? Is there a mechanism that this council could do, assuming that people wanted to do option B? Because at the moment, basically what you're saying is we can't do option B, we need to do option C. Is there a way that we can do option B, should we wish to, that resolves that potential conflict?
So I think that
Otherwise,
have you got a simple answer to that, Russell? Because I think this other thing to do was just to see which way the table's leaning.
That would mean the council to be more active in that space. We would take up the plan changes as a portion of our own work and be directly advocating for it on its merits.
Which would be significantly cheaper than private plan change, because the district plan isn't finalised yet. Yeah.
Is it possible to see what the appetite is around the table?
Yeah, so I think that is the next step. So we've got 3 options relating to this, and the reason I've moved to Councillor Evans.
I just before we go to those discussions about different options, just like to ask some questions of Russell while he's here. The land classification from the folks that came into the proposal. Changes.
Yes.
What's the difference between land classification of their property with the land classification of area FB, which is the Featherston Outer Residential South area, to the southeast of Waite Street? Because of our submitters, their land is classed as highly productive land, which is very similar, like just on the opposite side of Waite Street, further down. Would zone FB?
It appears Bree has an answer to that.
Through Madam Chair, I wasn't going to answer that specifically, but I think it's important that if the council were going to do a plan change in terms of the green property, they have to be satisfied under what's called the Section 32 analysis of the Resource Management Act, that is the proper proposition. What we've put on the table at the moment is that obviously the submitters are indicating they believe so, that we as staff are indicating, or consultants are indicating, that it's worthy of investigation, but that investigation hasn't been done by council yet, nor has it been done in terms of the trade-off, and this gets to your question, councillor, in terms of other areas such as FB. And so that's why the staff have put through option C to say there's merit in it. Let's make sure that this current master plan doesn't preclude the option of greenfield, and that's what option C is about. And then which land might be the best for that is yet to be determined. And either a private landowner can pursue it or the council can pursue it. That's the choice to come.
Which brings me to my earlier suggestion that we just get an indication from this table in which way they are leaning. So as earlier, can you give me an indication of your preferred option as option A, option B, or option C? Thank you.
Easy.
Right, so I think tables 8B, 8C and 8D have been well hashed out in earlier conversations, which brings us to 8E, and that's the one that I don't think we've touched on this morning yet, and that is the conversation around heritage precincts and the like. So we've got option A is to retain the proposed heritage provisions as per the draft Featherston Masterplan, including the existing heritage precinct in town and the newly proposed residential heritage precinct. Option B, keep the residential heritage precinct and establish a heritage fund the owners of the residential heritage buildings can access to cover resource consent fees if a resource consent is required as a result of being within a heritage precinct. Option C, retain the proposed heritage provisions as per the draft Featherston Masterplan, including the existing precinct in the town centre and the proposed new residential heritage precinct. So establish a heritage fund that all owners of all buildings in the precincts can access to cover the resource consents, or option D, reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre. I will open this by questioning whether we are crazy to introduce some regulations and over a heritage area and then suggest that we need to fund the resource consents to manage that. It feels a bit crazy. Russell, are we crazy?
Yes. Answer, as a benchmark comparison around the country, no, it wouldn't be crazy. It's, you do it, you're recognising the distinct nature of the heritage area within a town through an expert identification. Heritage expert identification, we've got it in there. We carrying that forward and having an enabling approach to help owners of heritage buildings in their further work. But on the contrary, it's a cost aspect for councils in terms of
I think that is my concern.
It would be a
that it would be a ratepayer cost, and that's the.
Madam Chair, could I'm just going to declare,
Sorry, I've got my hand up.
I just want to declare a conflict of interest on this.
Okay.
Oh, right, okay.
And the reason I'm going to do that is because heritage is going to come up as part of the district plan, and I don't want to say anything here that may give rise to predetermination on other.
Sorry, just before we go to Councillor Maynard, Russell, correct me if I'm wrong, but option D, the reducing the existing heritage provisions in the town centre, that doesn't, am I missing that connected to either of any of the options B and C? Because I know we did receive submissions on reducing the town centre heritage classification, but that doesn't seem to be linked between B and C if that was also a pathway we wanted to take. Councillor Maynard.
So I've got some concerns with regards to this, and one of them, I think one of the main ones is that we are a district. We are not a city or a town that actually has one heritage. Each town actually has these, and so we would have to be looking at targeted rates for all of the people who actually own those buildings to be able to be putting it into this fund. Where then possibly only one heritage building may end up needing, you know. I do have some real concerns here that this has a way of being possibly manipulated. I mean, you know, I'm not a fan of this. I think it's great that other councils, I'd be really interested to see if any of those councils were district councils and not councils that just dealt with one historical precinct, because we will have to ensure that whatever we set up, it's actually done as a targeted rate and is separate for each area. That's the only fair way to be able to do it. So if someone with a Greytown heritage building is needing to apply, then they can apply to the pool from Greytown and not be applying from the district one, which was then coming through. which then brings up, then who looks after it? Will it end up being on community boards or will it end up back at the council? This is, there's a lot of hooks.
I think
As far as I can see it.
merit to the protection of our heritage buildings. I don't want to discount that. I just wonder if this addition of a fund is a bit too far.
Yeah.
Councillor Olds and then Councillor.
Thanks, and I might be a little bit out of date, I guess, in terms of heritage precincts in particular, because
Yeah, still new buildings.
the reality of having a heritage precinct within a urban environment, certainly, and I'll take Featherston as a good example, was to protect our heritage buildings and make sure they're classified accordingly. If I look at at our current Main Street, and that's the aspect of heritage buildings along Fitzherbert Street, they've all disappeared, or they're in such a state of repair that they're no longer worthy of protection. And I'm just wondering how sensible we are to even consider aspects or elements. I see Paul sitting there because I know that he's got a beautiful heritage building at the far end of, or the southern end of Fitzherbert Street, but the rest of it, I question about the merit in that.
And I like the when it talks about option D, reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre. It talks about individually identifying heritage buildings that would still be protected, and I lean into that, and I think that is a good way to do it. I just wonder if the idea of the precinct and kind of a blanket overall of an area perhaps is not quite where we need to go. Councillor Fuller.
Does which of these is relating to the proposal for mixed use of Main Street? Do any of these involve that? I love that, Russ. And with the proposal for mixed use that's also been put, well, I can see that in any of these tables, right?
So how does the heritage
yeah.
precinct interact with the idea of mixed use zoning? Richard, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think they could all, the existing heritage provisions within the town centre, if we consider those, can sit alongside the mixed use provisions, because you can look at adapting buildings, you can look at, extending, you can look at developing behind, because a lot of those lots are really quite deep, and the actual heritage buildings right at the front of the lot. So I don't think actually having a heritage precinct through the town centre as it currently exists does really stand in the way of the mixed use development, and you'll remember discussions regarding mixed use. Why the buildings may be mixed use, we certainly want to maintain the commercial frontage, and those existing heritage buildings have existing commercial frontages, so the whole thing in my view can work quite nicely together. And I think clearly those, whilst I accept a number of the buildings in the Main Street are in poor condition, the heritage character of some of those does add something. So I think it can all work well together.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Gray.
Just to take this in a slightly different direction, I reached out to Papa a couple of months ago about the possibility of having a virtual heritage project for Featherston, as a way of capturing what we have now without restricting what we can do with the town in the future. And I think, certainly if we're looking at a town that's growing, it will change the fabric of how Featherston is, and we can try and preserve it as much as we like, but ultimately it is going to change how it feels. But the idea that we could potentially capture what we have now, and they kind of linked me back to Upper Hutt has got a virtual heritage tour that they do. There's a couple of other councils that do it, but I think there's, potential for doing something pretty cool in this space. I don't broadly support the idea of a heritage precinct. I like the idea that heritage buildings are individually protected, but I do pick up on the point that things that wouldn't meet heritage criteria now will in the near future, and if we lose them now, then they never get to the heritage status. So I think maybe the sort of having a virtual capture of Featherston as it stands maybe marries those two together.
Do you think that there is the space for an option E, which would be in line with D, which is reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre, and something along the lines of individually identify residential heritage buildings to be protected.
Yes.
Rather than sort of the blanket approach that we've perhaps have looked to take to now.
Certainly in consultation, when we had the engagement with people, I'm thinking sort of along the walk and talk engagement we had, was very, very little appetite for having a heritage precinct. And the broad vibe of it was a way for council to create a new category and then charge higher rates for it. And I know that that's not our intention for it, but if that is how it would manifest. Yeah, there just was no community appetite for it from what I'd heard.
Can I get an indication as earlier the room for the support of an option E, which would read or somewhere give the vibe to reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre and individually identify residential heritage buildings to be protected.
I would support that.
Residential or not commercial?
So we've already
Yeah.
commercial or is already identified and reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre, because that is looking at those commercial buildings. And then we would be individually identify residential heritage buildings to be protected. So we'd be looking at them individually rather than with a blanket precinct approach.
Just residential.
So just an indication that that would be the direction.
Hang on, just you're saying just residential, not commercial.
No, so option, so what we're doing is we're taking option D, which is reduce the existing heritage provisions in the town centre, which is the Main Street. So Main Street currently has a heritage precinct listing. So what we're doing is we're reducing that. We're saying actually look at that on an individual basis, please. Additionally, individually identify residential heritage buildings to be protected. So please don't take the blanket precinct approach that you had suggested. Let's take an individual approach to both town centre and residential.
Makes sense, huge sense. I really support that.
Thank you. So that would be that's the indication in option E. I think to potentially is there any further discussion we want to have on the concept of mixed use in terms of giving a indication to the staff?
Yes.
So I know
You can't.
no, we've finished
Heritage.
we've finished heritage.
We take a 5-minute break because I would need to get up.
Yes, we can. So shall we?
Please have the discussion on mixed use.
So
Mixed use is the end, that's it.
we've got to, hold on, Russell, we've got to 11, so we can do one of two things. We can either take a 5-minute break or we can resolve to continue without a break. We need to do one of.
This is the last topic, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, why don't we just finish it off? Suppose we just finish it off.
Yep, I'm happy.
So do we need to vote on that, Amy?
Yes, so you resolve to continue.
So resolve to continue. Mover and seconder, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, on we carry. Mixed use.
Okay, I've got a little bit of concern because in a town that is as small as Featherston, and it's I'm talking about mixed use and the commercial, which changes about the zoning. And we're talking the main shopping area, main commercial area, which is going to be rezoned as mixed use. I have a concern that in a town that is so small, with very few commercial activities already, if you mix use it, the potential is there that we would lose even more commercial spaces, and then the reverse sensitivity. Now that does not preclude, if you leave this commercial, that doesn't preclude people coming in and turning it in residential because they can still apply and do things and so on and so forth. But if you go mixed use, then they don't have to apply for that, so they can come in and develop as they see fit. That's the problem and the risk. And when you've only got a stretch, and I think it's only about 400 metres long, you end up with potentially losing some of that space, which people have been talking about wanting. When I look down Featherston and I go down, I think, well, we've got our world famous cheese factory, we've got a cafe, we've got
two cafes.
A cafe.
We've got two cafes, a bottle shop, a dairy, and a pharmacy, and
I don't look Chinese.
but you know, it's not growth business, which everybody talks about wanting to grow it. As soon as
I
you,
think the point perhaps you're trying to make is we would do much better to have more commercial space available for business than less.
I agree, totally agree. I support that.
so I'd be reluctant to rezone it at this stage. Well, maybe in 5 years' time when things are.
On the option,
No.
option D is, it doesn't say anything about.
And that was
No, it's not in there.
Heritage. Mixed.
It's not anything to do with heritage.
Sorry, we've moved on from heritage, sorry.
My point was original document. No,
It's
it
in the
wasn't the original document. That was my point.
Original document, that the commercial area at the moment would be changed to mixed,
Next.
and that hasn't been identified anywhere here.
Not that I could see, that's why Russell's.
Russell and
And
Reed, and then we'll continue from there, so Russell.
Yeah, just in terms of the needed discussion, I'll state my piece and the add Richard, need a discussion on it. So mixed use has been advocated on the basis of the clear recognition that Featherston as a town has fragmented and piecemeal, a history of fragmented and piecemeal zoning. That's the unfortunate history of the town. So it was being advocated, and I say that on my own behalf and on the behalf of the consultants in terms of bringing some offering to the table. So it's always been there as an option. It's a benchmark practice throughout New Zealand in terms of value of mixed use. At the moment, it's an option, and it provides usually for business at ground floor level and residential at the upper or the rear.
That's any commercial property though.
And it's business and commercial at ground floor level. So it seeks to achieve two ends and is a more open approach and more of a responsive to tidying up your zoning. I'll go to Reed.
Just ask a quick question of clarification before we go to Reed. So when I think about our main street, and particularly because of the sort of the average age of the building, a lot of the buildings are built with shop fronts and residential at the back. So the current zoning is commercial, but allows for on-site living.
And conversely, you've got some residential properties that are zoned commercial.
Right.
So, which is my point about the piece.
But the piece.
Segmented nature of the zoning.
Thank you, Reed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to add really to the last point that Russell already mentioned. In the current master plan on page 17, when it referred to mixed-use development and some residential along Fitzherbert and State Highway 2, it said on the proviso that the ground floor street frontages remain in retail and commercial. So in other words, you can have residential above the commercial space, but not at ground floor. So that picks up the idea that you don't lose the commercial space. I'd have to go back to see what Mike Cullen commented on this when we did the review of looking at train stations and mixed-use development. I just haven't got that at hand to do so at the moment. In terms of reverse sensitivity, there can always be some issues around reverse sensitivity with residential co-located, but it is always a bit of a trade-off to try to make sure that any residential development, for example, has double glazing, there's acoustic insulation and those sorts of things. And the trade-off is that you're trying to also get more life and residents living within the town centre and different choices and opportunities for different lifestyles. Of younger people might want a more affordable apartment, or an older person might want to downsize or whatever. So those are kind of trade-offs for your consideration.
Thank you, Reed.
Sorry, so I just want some clarification here. So you're saying that no longer when people in the commercial areas who have the commercial front and then have some kind of like living space in the back, that would no longer be allowed? That have to then have a residential above, because a lot of our buildings don't go that high. So I have some concerns with that. And also my understanding is, so we've always, like, that is literally what our commercial has always looked like, that you can, as long as, so commercial in the front And it has to be looking out, because Russell and I went over this in depth when we had someone who had a building that was being used as residential in the commercial area, which is why I know a lot about what is a commercial building. Now, I'd hate to see that suddenly all of these buildings that have still met with all of our compliance, what we've been asking them for, which is having that frontage that is still used as commercial, and may have like an area in the back that is their living space, or living space for their manager or retail manager, or so that way they have them, suddenly isn't allowed anymore in the commercial.
I guess the question would be the mixed use zoning does that apply just to new builds? So when you say must have ground floor commercial and residential above, would that ruling be just for new builds going forward? It wouldn't address the situation that Councillor Maynard is.
Mixed use approach has a future focused approach. It businesses that are legally established. It's also the topic of existing use rights for a use that's already established. So if it's business there at the moment, they remain as a business there, but it opens up the potential for addressing the residential growth provisioning that the master plan is about as a potential suitable solution for sorting out zoning as well, and having an open approach to providing for both. Existing rights maintains those uses that are already set up.
Reid, you had something to add?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe it precludes having residential at the rear of the commercial buildings in mixed use, and perhaps we need to make that more explicit, because the wording already says that it's that providing that ground floor street frontages remain in retail commercial. So if it's at the rear, you can have residential, but I think it is important that we make that more explicit, and we should amend the plan if it's if that's where you want to go, to make sure that that is very clear to the existing owners. That's not making them non-complying at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, because I'd hate to see that being lost now.
Right, so I'm aware that an amendment to mixed zone use we haven't been specifically asked to comment on that today. There isn't currently an amendment. So the indication that we would be looking for today from the table is, are we comfortable with collectively moving forward with the recommendation that Rhea has just talked about, that currently it's in there with provision for, provided that, et cetera, as
that will come to the June table.
It would
come to the June table as
final.
I think it needs to come to the table.
Yeah. So what we're looking for today is, as with everything else, is an indication. Are we comfortable with that direction, or is the indication we need to give to Ree and Richard and the rest of the team actually no, that flies in the face of what we're comfortable with, and actually we want to maintain what we have or go in a different direction? So that is the indication we need to give the team today for final decision in June.
Another salient point that you need to consider, Chair, councillors, is that this document went out for consultation, and it had the mixed use as part of the overall package of transformation for the town.
And I think I certainly like Ree's explanation in terms of that point of clarification.
More explicit, I think.
Residential and the way that it's lined out, and I'd like to see that incorporated in the body of the document. Yeah.
So
that transparency.
What I'm hearing is that there is a indication of comfort with that direction, but it needs to be more explicit.
Yeah. That's for transparency.
I'm saying nothing.
I know one of the points against having mixed use in a main street that doesn't have a lot of car parking. If you have a residential building on there, you lose those cars. So I don't know if this is the place to kind of shoehorn in something around. If you are going to be having residential stuff in there, they have to, as
Off-street parking, that's
off-street parking.
Real for Russell, can we indicate that at this level that that off-street parking needs to be accounted for? in any new mixed zone development?
New mix zone.
I mean, I guess the direction we give is that we want to prioritise down that street in particular, we want to prioritise commercial success and maintenance of car parking and anything that facilitates that. And I do understand that the direction of the master plan in the first place was to allow for further residential growth, but I think that there's opportunities to have that in places that is not our commercial district. So I think.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe you have the capacity to do that. In terms of the national policy statement, there are some councils like the bigger first order large city councils and the second order ones where that is not feasible because of the current national policy statement on urban development, but Featherston isn't in that category. And so I think you can indicate some direction, and we can put some wording in the updated version for June that where there is mixed use, that there is also maybe words like appropriate provision for on-site car parking or something like that.
Thank you. Councillor Elams.
Thanks, Chair. Russell, question for you. Already in our in the work that you do for businesses across the South Hawaii that are changing their buildings or creating new buildings, is there a current requirement for new commercial businesses to provide off-street parking across South Hawaii?
Within the plan, we've got car parking requirements for business zones, haven't we?
There is.
Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to be clear that when I talked about that, it's about having off-street parking for the residences.
Yep.
So they're not taking, so it's not that the businesses need to somehow also have car parking on site. It's that the people living on those sites aren't taking away car parks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that, but I was just sort of wondering as to whether we've already got the mechanism for off-street parking for businesses in action at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other master plan topic that we want to discuss today for direction to the staff? Or are we currently in a position where we can endorse the recommendations and our amendments to them?
With those alterations.
Yes, yeah. Right, with that in mind, no one's rushing to further topics. I'm looking for a mover to endorse the recommended amendments to the draft master plan as outlined in table 7, included in the report, and subject to our amendments this morning, which Amy has captured, and request that the final draft Featherston Master Plan and Implementation Plan be reported back to the Strategy Working Committee for final review and adoption at the committee's meeting on 5 June 2024. Thank you, Councillor Gray, and seconder Councillor Olds. Do either of you wish to speak to the matter before we move?
I've spoken enough.
Spoken, but I just would like to, I know it's been said before, would really like to congratulate Amanda, who's no longer with us, but Amanda and the communications team around the engagement that they've had with the community and the opportunities that they've given for the community to engage with us. And I know it's a fairly contentious plan. I know there's like lots of fors and against, and trying to get everybody happy is always very difficult, but I think it has been very positive overall. Yeah. So thanks, Amanda's team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russell's team.
And thanks, Russell's team.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, obviously, yes, thank you very much.
They did the hard graft.
They did do the hard graft, yeah.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah.
Joyce,
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please.
I'm not against, except for the car, I'm in favour of the most, except for the car parking and the mixed use. So overall, yes.
We're taking all of the amendments as a bulk lot, bearing in mind that they will come to us for final deliberation 5 June.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we need votes for or votes against. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. The motion is carried.
And-
And
I'll abstain.
fine, thank you.
Come on, thanks.
And Alistair actually put his hand up.
Yeah, right, no.
Put his hand.
Oh, sorry, you're against.
Yeah, well, I can't support the whole lot, so. So, no.
Motion is carried. And we'll now look to close the meeting, the closing karakia. Do we have a volunteer just for that this evening?
Close the cap here.
Sure. So is that Councillor Maynard, you're going to do that?
Alright.
Surprised you can do one day.
Kia mutu a mātou mahi, mō tēnei wā, manakitia, mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ai o, ki te aorangi.
Thank you. Kia ora. Meeting is closed. Just a reminder that we have our next meeting at 11:30 this morning.